Hey.
How you doing?
Oh, not too bad, all things considered.
Good. First off, love your shirt.
Oh, thanks.
Amazing. Um, so anything before we get started proper, any odds and ends to just
Hmm.
how you get caught up on?
Let me think. I don't know if it's. I don't know if this is what you have in mind, but uh, there were a couple of interesting things that happened yesterday and today. Um, I spent a lot of time in bed this week. Hang on, someone wants in. Come on. As a general rule, she doesn't like being anywhere where I am not.
Yeah, I got that. So,
She can get pretty upset about it. Um, so lying in bed, getting over what Susanna and I both caught this week,
yeah.
and I don't know if that has anything to do with it. It may not, but um, from yesterday morning and into the afternoon, there were trying to recall it. First of all, there was this very deep seeing that no one was here.
Mm,
And it was, I'm going to hazard to say it was deeper than it has generally been before.
yeah.
And then the other thing along with that was that, and this has lightened up since then. I mean, it can still be recalled. If I put my attention on it, it can still be recalled. The other thing was just the fact that forming an opinion was really, really impossible.
Amazing.
I mean, it was very clear that opinions were just, they cannot be true. And I mean, I've known that, but I guess it's more of an intellectual thing. So yesterday, I mean, it must have lasted 3, 4, 5 hours, and kept coming back to this. I was reading a lot, but as I was reading, I would put whatever I was reading aside and kind of come back to it. It was just really interesting to be able to get that in a deep, intuitive way, even if it was only for however many hours.
Yeah.
Again, I still see it, but the difference is yesterday when I would try to actually form an opinion, I was like, how can I? It's like lying.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did it feel on like a visceral level? Like, did you notice something perceptually or physically that actually changes in those 3 or 4 hours?
It was more than just a head thing.
Hmm.
It's hard to say it was in the body,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it was kind of in the body. I mean, it was kind of felt. I mean, it was felt. It was felt in such a way that um, it really made it difficult to form an opinion. Suzanne and I would converse back and forth from time to time, and if something came up that would normally prompt an opinion, it was the intention arose to find some way to respond and skirt around that opinion, to not engage or indulge that opinion.
Yeah.
So whereas now it's easier to kind of fall back into that habit, even though I can recall yesterday quite clearly. Um,
So I'm curious of the difference of having that understanding at that deep visceral level, and then now you can form an opinion, but I don't want to go too deep too quick, but I'm really curious about um what is it about, and this kind of tacks on to what we talked about with belief last time. Um, what is it that actually can, what is an opinion?
Hmm.
What is your experience of that opinion? You have an idea that, I don't know, the Freak Out album is better than Hot Rats, but like that's just it's an idea that is formulated, and what is underneath that makes it believed or an opinion and not just something that you read on a, like
Hmm.
graffiti on a wall.
Boy, that's a really good question. Um, huh. I guess it's the sense that, and I can kind of see the difficulty with this as I go to say it out loud, but it's kind of the sense that it's formulated here, and
By formulated, it's like heard or perceived here.
right.
Get underneath that though. What is it about the experience of having the opinion that feels like it was created here, like it was homegrown and not just something that you're hearing from the outside?
I guess the fact that it's so close in that it creates this assumption of possession.
Feel into that. So you have is it close because you've had the thought multiple times, or does it feel like it triggers something physically in the body that reinforces the um the validity of the thought?
I think it's the second one. I wish I'd thought to pay attention to what was going on in the body. I need to learn to do that more.
Pick up right now, like pick an opinion that you have that you actually, hold pretty pretty true.
I think that may have affected things more than I realized because when I go to try to find an opinion, I realize that um, it's really hard to take something seriously when you realize it's so relativistic.
Yeah,
um,
really good.
but let me see. I'm sure I can. Oh, hold on a minute. Um, okay, I know. I think I've got one. Well, hold on a minute. um,
Oh,
she's been in a mood today. I don't know what's going on with her. It's like
aw,
not. She's like she's discontent unless she's right next to me.
aw.
I think it's because I've spent so much time in bed this week and she's been right there.
Yeah.
Um,
Aw.
well, this is probably as close as I can get. That it's wrong to harm another living thing.
Yeah, that's a good one. So how does that feel in the body that it makes that seem to be a truth? Because not everybody obviously holds that opinion.
Right?
So what is it that makes it feel to you to be a true thing? Does it have to have, well, I read it in the Bible and they said does it come from like an external source that has told you that it's wrong, or does something else feel more innately true about it to you?
Well, I mean, it does come from an external source, but at the same time, having come from that external source, there's kind of this sense of I don't know, kind of a sense of density in here
Hmm.
that
Good.
seems to accompany it.
Good. So feel that sense of density. And it can help if you close your eyes. Feel the sense of density around that belief that it's never okay to kill another being. And what is that density actually made of? We can't just say it's some vague soul stuff. There's something,
It's like it's energy. It seems energetic.
and can you feel where it is? And
Yeah, I feel it in the lower half of my face and right in here,
good,
and it might even be in the neck.
good. Do you feel it as, instead of just calling it energy, because we don't really know what energy feels like exactly? Is it like a tingling? Is it vibrating? Is
There's a subtle kind of humming to it, but I think probably more than anything else, it's maybe kind of a sense of tightness.
good. So the tightness has to come from some sort of muscular tension, right? Can't really feel tightness of energy.
Okay.
You can't feel tightness of space. So it's probably coming from the muscles in some physical form. And see if while you're feeling that in that whole area, neck, lower jaw, chest, are you feeling your heartbeat at all?
I wasn't noticing it until you asked about it.
Hmm. And do you feel the vibration could be something to do with the pulsing of the blood through the arteries and the veins in that area?
It could. I mean, honestly, I really don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I would have a definite answer to that, but it's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, I just want you to get really clear on what you're feeling so that even if you don't know for sure that it's blood there, noticing whether it's really a physical sensation that is just so not familiarly looked at that you just take it to be some kind of other, question, energetic, non-quantifiable, extra source. Is it something that's actually purely physical sensation arising from the body that is being felt in conjunction with the thought that no one should harm any living beings?
I'm having a hard time remembering all of that, but from what I can recall, what you just said, it does seem like that's the case. That there's this sensation in the body, and there's this idea, and the two are being construed as being connected, or are taken as one.
Mm-hmm. Good.
It's so strange that a sense of bodily tension or tightening in the body or whatever it might be, any kind of sensation in the body, creates a an assumption of some kind of being or personhood
Mm-hmm.
or an I. That is so bizarre. I mean, well, there's why would that be? I mean,
Well, it makes sense in a way. So if you think that to start with, if you take the human body as an organism that's akin to like a single cell creature. We have these amoeba and things like that that are probably not self-aware and conscious to the level that we are. Maybe in some way we don't know, but they have this drive for replication and nourishment, and it's just kind of energy in, uh, replicants out. And if you figure that we're basically just a more complicated version of that, you have a mind that has over millions of years evolved to create this sort of the best the best way to function in a world where it can get all of its needs met. And when you have something as big and complicated as the human body, it's helpful to have a sense of where in the world it's located, um, how it's moving. We have all of these different, mostly unconscious, uh, alarm systems in the body that go off when, you have a stomach ache. Well, why is that? There's something going on down there. Ordinarily, you don't feel your stomach, but or those parts of the stomach or the intestines or something you don't really feel unless there's something kind of abnormal happening there. Um, we have a pain in the foot, and it's to alert us that there's something going on with the foot that needs to be taken care of. We have that proprioceptive sense so that we know whether we're standing upright or on our heads, or, so that we don't walk into objects and things like that. So all of that is really useful. And then this second idea of the self has been what appears to be neurobiologically a later construct that has been added on because it is socially useful to feel like we have um, some sort of connection with other people in a way that makes it feel very real and um, relevant to us. It creates that sense of functioning in a world where if my need is to procreate and eat, whatever drives that sense of of urgency is going to help me reproduce and pass that on to somebody else. So there's kind of a natural selection element of that where I think it has become a really functional thing on one level. But it's like what we take to be that self is a combination of all of the different aspects of physical sensations in the body, these thoughts, everything that we seem to hear and feel and smell and taste coming in this region, and then all the thoughts about it, all the history of the memories that's being stitched together constantly, and then even the what other people, like our projection of what other people are seeing of us and how we see ourselves in society, and all of these things are basically being stitched together in a way that it seems like this, for most people who have never even heard of this stuff, it seems like this unquestionably real cohesive self. And it's just because it hasn't been extracted into, it hasn't been looked at with the microscope to see, oh, no, that's just muscle sensation. That's just a thought. That's just a sound. That's, whatever. Um, it just hasn't been teased apart like that. And so I think, it's useful in terms of we've been functioning with this, supposed sense of self for a very, very long time. And it's
Mhm.
led to, people putting people in space and creating AI and doing all sorts of really crazy things that maybe wouldn't have happened had we just been kind of idly moving about like automata. So maybe there's something there where it has pushed, but it's all this. And I think if you look at because we've been doing this sort of thing for so long, like you, me, a lot of other people who are watching this, it's easy to forget how much we have taken the sense of self for granted in the past. And so when you hear other people who have never heard of like Buddhism or no self or things like that, there is such a belief, unquestioned belief in the identification with thoughts and with the body and with experience that is at a level that I think we actually forget about the more we do this stuff because it gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and then we see through it, seems to come back, gets weaker again. We have another experience without it. We forget that even when you seem to be kind of bound and identified now, it's probably much, much more subtle and much more open than it ever was decades ago.
Well, that ties right into something else. One moment.
Perfect.
Well, you couldn't have led into this anymore in any better way. So the other thing I wanted to mention was woke up at this morning at 4:30, just kind of startled awake, and no connection to it. It's just woken up by this fear. After I got the fear out of the way, I couldn't go back to sleep. So I was lying there, and I don't know how it happened, but what was noticed next was that there was this sense of inhabiting the body, very, very. It's not really the right word, but concretely, for lack of a better word. I mean, it was felt very strongly inhabiting the body. Could really, I mean, at one point I was kind of moving my arms to really draw some attention to it, and kind of notice how it felt, and could really feel I was in my arms, and I was in my upper body, and that kind of thing. And it felt really uncomfortable. It was really unsettling. It was just really unpleasant. And it didn't take long to kind of figure out that what was happening was, and this seems like this might sound like it implies some kind of intention coming from somewhere else, and that's not the case. But it was as if it was getting a look at how it had been. And I recalled something that you and I discussed last week. I can't remember what it was now, but we had said something, there had been something that was discussed that kind of touched on that, about, oh, I know what it was. It was, I'd mentioned that, at night, turn the light off, go to bed, and that the boundary between in here and out there is really darn thin.
Yeah.
And so there's not that sense of inhabiting a body or being in a body the way there once was. But it's been long enough that it's been this way that it's easy to forget what it can be like. And so it was kind of like getting a reminder.
Yeah.
Of, well, it could be like this. And I mean, there was one point where the thought came up of, God, I hope this doesn't stay. I don't want to have to live like this, because it really was uncomfortable. I mean, it really was. Ooh, the thought of having to resume living feelings is such. Inhabiting a body and things being that dense and heavy, and ooh.
Yeah, I get it. That's an amazing thing, and there's a bit of an insight in that too, and that all of these things, whether it's feeling super inhabited in the body or super free and empty, they're all perceptual shifts. They're all just these perceptual illusions of, now it feels like I'm super dense and super heavy in the body. And then a moment later, it's like, I can't even tell that there is a body, and I can't tell where the inside and outside end. Nothing has actually changed. The body hasn't changed shape. It hasn't changed density. There isn't a self who has suddenly appeared and gotten really contracted and, turned into molasses and really thick and dense. And then other times it just kind of turns into steam and, escapes through the pores. It's just the same experience being seen through this different perceptual lens that creates a sense of density or creates a sense of lightness and openness and expansiveness. But nothing has actually changed in that, just a perception of it.
That's interesting. That had not come up, and that had not occurred to me at all.
Because we immediately take it to mean that, oh shit, I'm going to be stuck in this body now. There's that feeling of density, like we were saying, with that feeling of what makes the opinion seem homegrown, is this sensation in the body. And the more sort of in the body you feel in that way, where it feels really dense and contracted and whole, it creates that illusion of, there is a self inside this body. If this body feels really dense and it feels like it's being controlled by something, here I am. I am in this, big heavy meat suit that I'm lumbering around in. But it's the exact same thing without that added layer of meanness. As soon as that contraction releases, that feeling of tension and tightness goes away, and that that feeling of meanness starts to evaporate. That's why I always bring up, I'm sure I've brought it up to you at least more than once, the Alan Watts quote that the sense of self is just a persistent, sorry, the sense of self is just a chronic muscular tension. And I remember hearing that years ago while I was driving, and I like felt into my back and my butt and went, oh, like that is so true. And like that was like one of the first really big openings was listening to that and being like, it is. Like it was just this wild thing of course, so much of what we take to be the sense of self is just chronic muscular tension.
Wow. It's, I mean, I don't disbelieve it, but it's almost hard to believe that that's one of the sources of a sense of being someone. And that's really
Absolutely.
bizarre.
Massively.
I mean, I've
Because
seen it for myself. I mean,
yeah.
I've been paying attention, trying to pay attention to, you know, getting up and doing things and moving about when taking, you know, when in quotes, making a decision or following an intention, seeing what's going on there. And, you know, it's really clear that a decision never happens. Things just unfold.
Yeah.
Uh, but there's, uh, along with that has been um, starting to see how much of the time there's some kind of contraction or some kind of sensation in the body that gets associated with it, along with like what we talked about last week, the little mental images,
Yeah.
which you know that what we talked about last week really changed or really opened a door rather, because now from it's not all the time, but some of the time I can see um, that there is a kind of a mental snapshot there, but it's really subtle. I mean, there was one time, sometime earlier this week, where it was, it almost all it looked like was kind of a dark gray column,
Hmm.
just seen inside the headspace. It
Yeah.
wasn't a picture of anything. It was just kind of this mental image of this dark gray thing, and it was there and gone. And something so fleeting and something so, I mean, up until recently, you know, last week, wasn't even conscious of it. Yet it can help kind of crystallize this "here I am" sense.
Yeah.
You know, that to mine, it's really kind of it's. I don't want to say bizarre, but it's really, I don't even know what the word for it is. It's really just it. I would have never guessed. I would have thought it was something else.
Yeah.
You know, I would have thought there was something else at work, not not something that's so just unbelievably insubstantial.
Yeah. It's crazy. And you know, there's probably some other layer of because we know there's like a layer of like this just stream of thought that happens like even underneath those thoughts. But there are things processing all the time, but we don't really need to be aware of those because we can't really be aware of those. They're going to continue doing their thing, but they might be in fact impacting emotions, brief feelings, but that's why we don't get attached to those either, because we recognize that just because we have an emotion, just because we have a brief feeling of something, it doesn't indicate something about us, and it doesn't mean that it's a real thing that we're going through. It's just this passing little weather pattern. Um, so two examples of that just recently. I had a couple days ago. I was like, just had this reluctance to respond to messages that day. Like, you know, it was like I knew I had some people who I was supposed to respond to, and just something was coming up and it just didn't feel right at that point. And looking into what it was, there was, are you okay?
Yeah, I wanted to get rid of the self view. I keep having to
Oh,
try and tune it out.
that's
So,
fine. There's if you go to the view in the corner and then hit speaker view, that should do it if that's
oh, I got it. There's another way
okay.
to do it.
Okay, cool. Um So I had this like reluctance to respond to people, and I was trying to feel like, well, what is that about? And I just had this like brief mental image of, and it makes no sense, have absolutely no idea what it's in relation to. But there's this brief image of this body in like a winter coat and hat, just looking like he's posing for a camera, and like no idea what the connection is, absolutely no idea how it was, but it was clearly connected in some way. There was some thread there to this reluctance, and I still, eventually it just, went away. But it was like this weird thing that is just like clearly connected, and it makes no logical sense, and yet there's something there that is still, there was probably some memory about an instance when I was like that, which had some sort of underlying belief tied to it, which was tying to something else that's still, just uncertain. But it's just weird little things pop up. And then the other example was just that, was it last week? I had a couple days. Oh, sorry. Wait to come back.
No, you're okay. Come on.
The menagerie.
Hopefully this isn't going to continue. Otherwise, I'll have to ask my daughter to help me out.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other thing was,
The other thing was I had a few days last week where I just had this weird funk that just kind of rolled in. And it was like it was completely non-specific. It was like just kind of feeling, a little low, like easy laughter wasn't coming, super easy, whatever. It was just that. But there was no, this is saying something about me, I have to get rid of it. There's no resistance to it in that way. It's just like a weather pattern that just kind of moves in. It stayed for a few days and then just went back away. And it was just like gone the way it came. So instead of making like stories about it or creating a whole self drama about any of it, it's just, probably something hormonal. I have no idea. Something that could have been from, some other trauma thing that hasn't been seen through yet, that's, still bubbling under there and had like some sort of a relation to it. We don't know. But it's just to not get hung up on any of these things when they come through. Just recognize that there's nothing personal in the emotional weather patterns that come up, and there's nothing personal in, the feelings of being contracted into the body, and then the feelings of openness. it we have a real habit of identifying either as the one who is here contracted or the one who is open and part of everything. And even though it's like, yes, I am one with the universe, there's still this idea of identification there, which has not been seen through. It's just pushing it from the small to the big, and it's the exact same thing.
yeah, huh. Well, I'm glad you told me that. That's helpful information, especially that first one about the mental image of the person in the coat and the hat and all of that. Because when these sorts of things, when you hear someone talk about something um, of that nature, um, there are a lot of things rather that somebody will experience, and more often than not, they're not unique.
Yeah,
If it's happening to someone else, you probably ought to look at your own experience because you probably will find it there.
100%.
Right. So that's um, something else to make use of, because that's the thing that's really been um, kind of confounding is, and maybe even frustrating is, you know, where is this sense of I? Where is it coming from? What in the heck is it? And I'm learning to understand between things you've said to me and things I'm hearing elsewhere that part of the problem and where a lot of the doubt came from after having that moment of seeing last summer, the first fetter beginning to evaporate.
Yeah.
I mean, conventionally people would say that, the first fetter was broken, but I feel like I mean, maybe with some people it is and all at once, but I feel like probably more likely there's a moment of seeing through, but there's other stuff that has to slowly get broken down over time.
Absolutely.
And so there's that, but there's also, a lot of misconceptions and expectations that I have that I've got to get over or I've got to let go of that have, like I said, I think they helped feed a lot of that doubt after it had happened. This idea, not even really fully conscious. Oh, it's supposed to be like this.
Yeah.
Well, heck, reality is I don't know what it's supposed to be like. I've never been this way before.
Absolutely true. Exactly right. And you don't know what that other person is experiencing that's describing something. You know,
Mm.
they're using their best words to approximate something which is unexplainable that they're experiencing. You're taking that and filtering it through your perceptions of those words and then trying to use your imagination to figure out, oh, I think maybe they're talking about something like this. And then you're comparing your current situation to what you think somebody else might have been talking about with their choice of words to describe an ineffable experience. So of course, there's no way that you can compare. Um, doesn't stop us from trying,
Right.
but ultimately it's just leads to massive amounts of doubt, and that's really the outcome. Is it's just a place where you can never really be resolved because you can never trust your own experience.
Well, and that was something you said to me some weeks back, and that's also very true. Is that I second guess my own experience constantly,
Yeah.
um, and that's come up again recently. Somebody else said something to me about that. Um, so obviously that's something that has to be addressed, and I guess that's what the affirmations were beginning to try to address. So.
Yeah. Um, yeah, having that internal sense of conviction, well, confidence more than conviction. We want confidence at this point that that you can trust your own experience more than anybody else's is going to be so big. But for that, you have to have that internal boundary of where you know what you feel comfortable with, and that has to be strong enough that other people can't push through that. That if you have the idea that I know right now I'm experiencing X, and you can describe it however you want to describe it. And if somebody else can say to you that, no, what you're describing isn't right, if you're describing isn't, how it should be, uh, I think that you're actually describing this and not that. If you feel like you have to then question your experience because somebody else is telling you that it's not what they project that you are experiencing, you are allowing them to just move you around. There's no stability there. You're missing that boundary that is keeping other people in a healthy way separate. And this is what Pernilla and I have been talking about this recently because we're going to be doing the sixth fetter part of the awakening curriculum. And you have to have that inner healthy sense of boundary before you can break down the external sixth fetter non-duality boundaries.
Well, I think it's coming along because I have a friend who she, how do you put this? This area of human endeavor is something that is important to her as well. But she comes at it from a very different angle. And, that's fine because, it's like somebody said to me years ago, how many ways are there to Fort Worth? Um, so, that's fine. That's not an issue that she comes at it from a very different angle. But she insists that we have a tendency to kind of disagree on this stuff. And I'll say things to her and she'll kind of, in a kind of passive way, sort of challenge it.
Mhm.
And she insists that it's just that we use different language and we talk about it differently. And that may be the case, but it really does seem like it's just that we come at this from very different places.
Yeah.
And, I think she also is laboring under a lot of myths and misconceptions too, as well, because I think that everyone, especially in the West, is saddled with some degree of that about this stuff. So at any rate, for a couple of years, when we would talk about the stuff when it comes up from time to time, um, those conversations would leave me feeling frustrated, and disturbed, and things of that sort. And it was because of the fact that she would say things, and I would feel like I was wrong, and it would show up as feeling like I had to defend.
Mm,
It's like, well, no, I think you're mistaken.
yeah.
And it's just kind of this ego game back and forth. Two beings trying to shore up and defend their position.
Mm-hmm.
Well, something like that happened. I guess it was earlier this week. Yeah, it had to be because I talked to you last Friday, and we had one of those exchanges briefly via text, and I think actually this is the second time something like this has happened, where I just told her, this is my experience. This is what happened, and I can't explain it any other way. Basically, what I was telling her is, I'm trusting my own experience. I'm not going to try. I can't trust your experience. I can't take your word for my experience. So all that to say is, it seems like that's beginning to change.
Love that. That is so good to hear. Yeah, that's really, really amazing. Um, yeah. Um, when you feel like you have that feeling of having to defend the position, prior to this, because this is, I think what you did this time was perfect, of just saying, this is my experience. It's, recognize that it's important for her to also recognize that she can't understand your experience from how you describe it either. So, um, but that when we have that urge to defend against our position, there's that, it's because there's something there that feels really uncomfortable. There's something in there that is being defended against because um it feels insecure. There's
Right.
something that's uncomfortable and insecure there about being in a position that maybe you don't know what you think you know. And
Exactly.
you've been in that for so long, so often, that of course it's got to be a sore spot, right?
Probably. I had never thought of it like that, but yeah, I would think.
So it makes sense that, somebody says something and they're trying to push on you what they think you are saying, or what they think you are experiencing, and you're just in defense of it because it's a natural way of trying to not have that same feeling of I think it probably actually still goes back to your um fundamental starting point of shame, not being good enough, all of that sort of thing. That if you are wrong, they're basically saying, no, no, you are wrong in what you think, and then that just feeds right back into your whole experience of just never feeling like you are good enough to be correct. There's always something wrong about you, and of course, this is just one more instance where I've done it again. So
Right.
I think it pushes on that button, and then that just leads to this can't feel that. So then you have to insist that, you have to try to convince the other person that your way is correct. And actually they're the one who's wrong because um so it's great that you're getting to this point where you're not defending against it in that way, because it's not that it's pushing against that same wrong button as much. It's just that you are having the confidence that, no, what I experience is what I experience, and what you experience is what you experience, and that's fine. But I don't need to defend. I don't need to convince you, because there's nothing there to be defended. It's just stating the factual obvious of your experience is your experience and hers is not.
Well, and it's good to see this beginning to happen. And admittedly, some of that exchange, it was coming from a very conscious place rather than something more deeply felt, more intuitive,
Yep.
that's fine. It is very much a work in progress, and uh, I would have to say that I think that I saw an example of just how true that is yesterday, and that's part of what prompted that email that I sent you about, how do we ask the right questions? How do we work with this stuff? How do we use it as a point of practice and investigation when something happens that unsettles or upsets us? Because I just kind of by accident, in fact, very much by accident, wound up coming in contact with somebody that I had known back in the late 90s, well, actually through the 80s, all the way up to the end of the 90s. And when I got in touch with them, so we were texting back and forth, and at one point in time, um, they were asking a lot of questions and not answering any questions. And that was the first thing. I was like, well, why is this bothering me?
Mm-hmm.
And couldn't quite make any sense out of that. But what happened that speaks to this idea of this that boundary and that confidence being a work in progress is that when I said something to him to kind of see if I could kind of prod the ego a little bit, and because I kind of, even though it's been a long time, I know him and I know how he is and how he thinks. What I got back was this response about how he had um, managed to become really financially successful, and he had property here and property there and this, that, and the other. And I could have misunderstood it because it is by text after all, but knowing that person, that's the kind of thing I would expect him to say, where he would say something intended to kind of try to put you in your place. And it worked. And the funny thing is, those aren't my values.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
even if I could go that way, I really don't know that I would want to. I don't know that I'd want to play the money game and get in all of that. That's a degree of complication. I don't care for it. It gets connected to things that I think are morally and ethically questionable at best. Um, so, but in spite of that, there was still this having this sense of having been made smaller.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like I said, that's what prompted the email, because I was trying to work with them. Like, I don't even know the questions asked here. I don't even know how to begin to work with this.
Yeah.
But before we possibly leave that point, I want to say that made it really clear, that some progress is being made, but it is a work in progress. It's something that's going to take time, which is fine. But it's just good to know that, hey, there's still more work to be done.
Absolutely. And I think an interesting thing with that particular topic is that, yes, on one hand, you probably, really do not want to be part of that world that, there, as everything that you laid out is a really good example of why you wouldn't want to be in that world. But double check and see. So first of all, what does that life mean to you? What does it, not just the sort of artificial, you know, stereotypical, all the worst, things. What does that, if you felt smaller by it, there is an internal valuation of it, even if you don't consciously want that. What do you really feel about people who are financially successful, have lots of houses and cars and things like that?
Well, it depends on the person, because I've met some people who that's their world, and they're perfectly fine people.
Yeah.
But a lot of those people, I've either very directly or indirectly have been able to see and know this, that they get to where they're at by really um, the means that they achieve that by, they wind up leaving a lot of damage in their wake.
It can happen. It can happen for sure. But if you put aside that side of it,
Mm-hmm.
is there some element of it which is still desirable for you?
Well, I did kind of get close to, I think, what you're asking about, because when I was trying to figure out what was working there, the thought that came up was, you were born into and have lived your whole life in a capitalistic, materialist society. So even as much as that's not what you would choose for yourself, and haven't chose for myself, because there have been times where I could have made some decisions that might have led to something akin to that, um, and I haven't. I've rejected it. There still is the fact that you can't. I think it's pretty much it's all but impossible to grow up in that sort of um, environment and not wind up taking on some of those values, whether or not you realize it.
Yeah, yeah,
So that was what I thought might be at work.
yeah. So I'm curious, and is there something where one of those values is that there is a higher, um, somebody is on some level better, who has, the more money equals somewhat a better, more valuable person.
Yeah, and that kind of is, I think, what I was getting to with what I was just saying, is that whether or not I want to, some part of me has been conditioned to buy into that.
Yeah, but I'm curious, like so that's like a good cerebral way of looking at it, but feel into it. I want you to actually feel into the body with it and go,
Mm-hmm.
bring up the conversation, bring up that thing that made it so triggering or activating because you did feel smaller then after then. So what was it that made you feel smaller after a conversation with some guy on text who's talking about all of his houses and his vehicles, all the money and all the financial success he's had? How does that relate to you? What is that saying about you?
Um, hmm. That in some way I have failed because um, haven't I haven't been able to provide for myself or our family um, a higher level of comfort and security.
Mm,
Um, and it seems like maybe there's kind of a sense of entitlement, kind of a case of, well, that should be me, not him.
hmm
Um, he's this, that, or the other thing. He's not, because he could be less than nice at times.
hmm
um, and so, um, with him being that way, well, why not me? I'm a nice guy. I try to do the best I can to not hurt or harm others, and um, conduct myself in a way that um, is honorable, and so why not me?
Yeah,
Like I said, kind of a sense of entitlement.
yeah. Yeah, notice. So the first thing I want you to do is to feel into what is happening in the body with the idea of being a failure.
It's trying to recall it as best I can from yesterday. It seems like it was kind of a sense of shock and um, feeling foolish, and um, maybe kind of trying to withdraw into
Mm,
myself.
yeah, good. So when you bring that up, can you be with that and just instead of pushing it away, going to thoughts or anything else, can you
Hmm.
just be with that contraction, with that pulling in sense of shock, intensity, whatever it is, and just be with that. And I like to ask it, do you have a message for me? What is it that you're here to tell me? And then as you're sitting with that sensation with no judgment for it being there, it might be uncomfortable, but it's okay. Just be with the sensation and ask it if it has any messages for you. And just be open to anything that comes up in any form.
Not entirely sure I see the connection, but the thought that kind of came bubbling up is, why am I afraid?
Mm, good. Why are you afraid?
Huh. Huh. Okay, well, I'm just going to throw out the first thing,
Yeah.
right or wrong.
Yeah.
Um, there was a lot of financial insecurity in our house growing up.
Mm,
And it was exacerbated by the fact that my mom and dad would argue about things related to money and money problems, sometimes very loudly, right out in the open. I mean,
yeah.
they never went to their bedroom or went away from where my sisters were. And I remember as a kid, on one hand, I didn't understand it. Um, I mean, and when I say understand it, I didn't understand it in the way that you understand it when you're actually having to deal with it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I knew what they were talking about and I knew what the
Yeah.
problem was,
Yeah.
but I couldn't understand it in the sense of, well, this is what it's like to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Um, and without really being able to fully comprehend all of what was going on there and what that meant, there was still sort of this sense of, um, oh, something's wrong, or we may not be okay, or um, things of that nature. It just created a sense of insecurity.
Yeah.
Um, and so this person doesn't have to worry about those things, or at least by appearances doesn't. I mean, I don't know if that's really
Mhm.
true or not. And so it seems like maybe that's what, when it says, when that thought comes up, why are you afraid? Well, you know, because our financial security for the future is really uncertain in many ways.
Yeah.
So, and it just seems like you can tie a thread between all of those things, you know,
Absolutely.
as a kid, then to where Susanna and I stand and what he said to me.
Yeah. And I can also see as a kid, hearing your parents arguing about money ties in not just the financial aspect itself, but the fact that that's driving a wedge between your parents. Like it's causing
Mm-hmm.
tension in the family that, the parents are arguing with each other about something. That means that must be a really important thing. Like that's a really dangerous thing to have problems with because it's not just that you might lose your house, but it also is causing turbulence between people who supposedly love each other, you know?
Well, and if that winds up being another source of insecurity, that was always there because my parents they didn't divorce. In fact, my dad didn't wind up leaving until after years after all of us had left the house.
Wow.
But um, it never really felt like. In fact, yeah, it's not really. It definitely did not ever feel like my parents were together. And I know some people who, not everyone, but a lot of the people I grew up around, they had parents who were, they were together, they were a team, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I understand that too. Um, so when things like this come up, I would recommend going immediately into the body instead of getting
Okay.
caught up into stories about it or trying to, at that point, grasp for straws of, well, what is this connected to? I don't, like you said, you didn't know how to really get your hands around what the root of the issue was. So come
Hmm.
into the body, feel where it's the reaction is in the body. What is happening? Breathe into that area, put your attention there, and ask it some probing questions to see what comes up. And you will most likely find the root of that issue. There's something there that is probably one of these primary factors that we deal with all the time. But it'll definitely bring some clarity onto which it is. And then just be with the sensation because it's just sensation. It's not something you have to do anything about. It is just sensation.
That's great. I say that because that was what I was doing. I was trying to do something about it and wrestling with it, and getting nowhere. So not having to do anything about it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's going to go away on its own. The question is, do you get something out of the situation and recognize, oh, this is another case where this is feeding back into my insecurity of blank, or this is another fear of blank, whatever it is. And then it's just, oh, okay, there it is. So you can recognize over and over again, oh yeah, it's just that one. It's like a greatest hit. It's like, it's going to play up at some point. You go to the concert, they're going to play it. Okay. And then there it is. It comes through, but you recognize it as soon as it starts. It's like, oh, that's it again, and you can just feel it and you can just be with it just the same way as my few day funk was just there, but it wasn't something that had to be pushed against or fought with or anything like that. It's just, all right, just feel into this, see if anything comes up. If so, great. If not, okay, it still passes on its own. But you get a little bit more insight into where the love is needed, basically. you know
Hmm. Well, and the thing that really strikes me about that is that it, as much as it was not, it wasn't as if that had been long forgotten to the point that it was, wow, I didn't know that was there. At the same time, I can't remember the last time I thought about that. The fact that was part of growing up, and I
Right.
haven't thought about that in, it's got to be decades. You know,
Right. And yet it's there under the surface all the time.
right?
It's
Well, it's
there.
just interesting that it was there, and I'm carrying it around with me, and it's operating on me, and it didn't even see it. You
Yeah.
know.
Because none of this is under conscious control. There is no conscious control. But that none of this is what we consider to be like, of course, it's I had this reaction because they said this to me and I had to respond in such a way. No, no, no. It's all unconscious. It's all immediate, instinctual, and it's coming out of these insecurities and these sore spots. So once then, that's why everything we do with the fourth and fifth fetter is basically working through these sore spots to make sure that they don't have to be activated. Somebody can say something to us and it just rolls off of our back. Oh, it's great you bought another house. It's five. Wonderful. Amazing. Because it doesn't hit any sort of insecurity in us, then great. It's fine. Do what you want to do. You might still have thoughts about, man, he's really destroying the environment with that new private plane, whatever it is, like it's fine. But if it's coming from a place of just, compassion for the earth, that's one thing. If it's coming from a place of like sour grapes, like, I really wish I too had a private jet, like, but I'm not comfortable admitting that out loud. So I'm just gonna say that he's really an asshole for having one. Like that's where we have to be really honest with our own internal motivations and convictions.
Right. Well, and as a general rule, I mean, there might be exceptions, but I don't mind being honest about those things. I mean, that's something I learned back in the early 2000s was that it's in your own best interest to fess up.
Yeah. So absolutely, absolutely true. There was one other thing about that just before we leave that I just wanted to point out that when you said about there being and I know like consciously this isn't like something that you outwardly believe in, I'm sure, but the fact that it kind of comes up is still something to be looked into. uh you know I'm a nice guy. I should, why is it happening to him? He's kind of a jerk. Why is it why is it always the tools who get the stuff, the good stuff? Why is it not me? So
Hmm.
that is still, there's an implication there of this kind of moral valuation of how the world works. That good people
Uh,
deserve good things, bad people deserve to be punished. It's got a very Judeo-Christian kind of background happening.
yeah, you're right. You're right. And I fully admit to that naivete.
Yeah. So, and it's again, it's something that I'm sure was in the air, your whole life, that we get taught you got to be a good person and then good things will happen to you. And bad people, they get locked up and they, go to hell and all sorts of bad things happen to them. So you got to be on the right side. And unfortunately, we see over and over again that children die of cancer and all sorts of really terrible things happen to really good people. And it's that yet we still like to have that idea that but I deserve this because I've earned it. I'm good. I do the right things. And
Hmm.
no, so being aware of when that is poking its head up, and getting, that's one more belief that can be investigated.
Okay. I agree. Yet another thing that's right there in plain sight and not seen. I don't know if you're familiar with Jonathan Robinson. Um,
I don't
uh,
know. I don't think so.
he's I know him from Perfectly Okay. I don't know if he went through Perfectly Okay. I don't know if he went through the Finder's course or not. But he's given several different presentations over the years.
Okay.
He's a I think he's a psychotherapist,
Okay.
and he's written a number of books, and he's talks a lot about awakening and so forth. But he gave a talk, I guess, about 3 or 4 years ago about blind spots.
Uh,
And I remember, being there present for his presentation, and he kind of walked you through it, and I remember the experience of following his instruction and seeing some things about myself that was surprising to see that were right there in plain sight, but they they were hidden in plain sight.
yeah. Yeah.
And
Completely.
um, so and I actually found the process really enjoyable. It was really kind of fun. It was almost like playing a game.
That's really cool. I'm gonna look him up
But
because I'm not familiar.
huh?
I said I'm gonna look him up because I'm not familiar.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're interested in his talk about blind spots. Patty Levin might be able to help you locate that. But at any rate, but that's what we're doing right here. Is it's more more blind spots, things that are hidden in plain sight, and um, I'm glad for it.
I'm glad that you are, because it takes a certain amount of openness and um you know comfort to be able to be willing to look for them, because a lot of times they're blind spots because there's something sensitive there that we don't want to be exposed or don't want to come in contact with. So we just, doesn't exist, not over there, not looking that direction, it's fine, nothing to see over there. um I know it's been, Pernilla is an absolute uh insightful wizard when it comes to spotting stuff in people to begin with. But it is so helpful being with her, in a relationship with her, because she is so good at seeing any blind spot that, might be there, and being very tactful with her way of pointing things out. Yeah, she's fantastic like that. So it's really good to have a mirror.
So you have a relationship that is going to help further and deepen your development with this. That's pretty dang cool.
It's incredible. With both of us have been so so enriched by by the relationship from the very beginning. It's been truly incredible how we say that we're each other is the other's guru. You know, it's really amazing to have a relationship that's so, with that much love, but also just we talk about this stuff constantly. I mean, we wake up in the middle of the night, 4 o'clock. Oh, so I had a dream about this, or this came up, and we just start talking about whatever it is and investigating. And it's like every day we eat our breakfast slash lunch meal, and it's just like talking about this stuff constantly. It's just living in it 24 hours a day.
That's freaking brilliant.
It's amazing. It's truly amazing.
Wow, you're truly a fortunate guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So very, very, very I mean beyond lucky position to be in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I'm glad you guys have that.
Thank
You know,
you.
I mean,
Thank you.
everyone should. Unfortunately, not everyone does, but
I know. I know. I really wish that everybody could have that. Because it changes everything. I mean, like had no interest in ever being in a relationship. Like it was not on my radar at all. She wasn't interested in a relationship. It wasn't on her radar. And yet here we are, and it's just been absolutely wonderful. Like every moment. It's crazy. Yeah, it's a very weird story.
I can understand it's a completely different animal, but it was the same thing with my wife and I.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it it shouldn't have happened, and it did, and it happened in wound up happening in the weirdest possible way. I won't get into the whole thing, but I'll just give you one small taste.
Yeah.
We'd met when we were both, well, actually, yeah, we were both in our late teens, and we there was obviously this chemistry,
Yeah.
but things wound up happening, and we wound up going separate ways for a while. And she had actually been staying with my parents. I'd moved out, and she was staying with my parents for a while. And when she left a bunch of stuff behind. And so there was like social security number, her grandmother's address, driver's license number. And I thought, I'll hang on to this because at a later time, maybe this will be appropriate. Maybe this could happen, and I'll have a way of getting in touch with her. And I was actually involved with someone else. Well, that wound up dissolving,
Yeah.
and I had all that information. And from time to time, I'd put it in a book, and I knew which book, and I'd put it in there. And from time to time, I'd just check to make sure it was still there. And so one day, I went looking for it, and it wasn't in the book. And I thought the girlfriend that I was with had found it. And I
Yeah.
mean, I really checked. I opened up the book, shook it. I went through page by page, forwards and backwards, everything, and it just wasn't there. Like, dang, I was really kind of crestfallen. And then some while later, after that things had dissolved with that other person, I was moving back into my parents' place temporarily until I could get a place on my own. And as I was unpacking the books to put them on a bookshelf in the room in my house, my parents' house, I picked up that book. And as I picked it up, that envelope with all the stuff didn't just fall out; it came flying out of the book and hit the floor with a smack.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, and I'm like,
That's so
what the?
wild.
I know I went through that book. I went through it multiple times. I went through it
Yeah.
page by page, more than once.
That,
How?
that is so
Yeah,
weird. That is
yeah,
so weird. Incredible story though.
yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
things like that happen. So when you say that, I can relate to it. I mean, obviously your circumstances are different, but still, there it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a strange, and I mean it's really unknowable, ungraspable. We can create all sorts of stories around these things that where like, to create a sense of logic or meaning or reasonableness, but we have no idea how anything works, and it's just this
Mhm.
wonderful mystery. So
Yeah,
it's
I
a
agree.
miracle.
There's no need for an explanation. I don't
No,
know. And
Yeah,
I never will. Most likely, I'll never know. That's fine. I just, you know,
I know.
I can deal with not knowing. Once
Absolutely.
upon a time, I couldn't, but I can deal with not knowing
Yeah,
for the most part now.
that is such a huge deal. That's where it is. Um, one thing that I wanted to bring up too before we're out of time is
And I have something I want to ask you about too.
oh
So
sure.
go ahead.
It's just uh well actually maybe you should go first because otherwise I don't know how long it's gonna be. You go first.
Okay. Well, hopefully this won't take long.
Okay.
I mean, you could just give me some quick feedback on it and be
Sure.
done. That's fine. But as I've been, most of what I do now is walking around practice. Daily life as things are happening. Practice. I'm trying to reestablish my sitting practice,
Yeah.
which things keep getting in the way of it. And thought about it last night. It's like I've got all these books about Buddhism and spirituality stuff, and I've only read just a fraction of them. I don't crack most of them open for whatever reason. It's like,
Yeah.
so that's my practice. That's really where most of it happens, is trying to remember going through daily life to do things. And so as I've been doing that and kind of building that up from suggestions you've given me, one of the things I've noticed, trying to look when getting up to do something, when an intention happens, when there's a sense of a decision being made, that kind of thing. What is it that gives it a sense that there's someone doing that? Well, one of the things I've noticed is that one of the things that seems to create a sense of someone here doing something is that in going to do something, in going to follow an intention, is it's almost like, okay, if looking out is a camera, it's
Hmm.
almost like that camera of attention is turning back around and looking this way, looking in here.
Yeah. Yep.
And you're shaking your head, so
Yep.
I'm going to assume that I'm not misunderstanding what I'm seeing.
Nope, not at all. But
Okay.
but that's sort of the first assumption of how we experience it. So what I would like you to notice all along that path though, it looks like there's a camera pointing out, and
Mm-hmm.
then it feels like that camera is turning around and pointing in this direction. But
Mm-hmm.
notice what's actually happening as you do that. That camera, you're seeing an image of whatever's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
I hilariously tried actually pointing this out to one of my other groups, and I created a metaphor off the top of my head, which did not work, and it was very, very bad. So, so I will not be using that metaphor again.
Okay.
But but if you have in front of you, what are you looking at right now?
The computer monitor with the camera and you.
Okay, good. So if you right now you have an image of a computer monitor and a camera, right? So when you turn that perception back, I want you to notice if you were turning that back on, give me like right now, if you're turning it to what that's, do you want to do the sense of intention? Do you want to do the feeling of the self that's, if there's a feeling of meanness in the back there someplace, what's going on that you feel like you could turn your, excuse me, attention towards?
Okay, hang on a sec. Let me see. Um, I guess it would be following an intention. There's the impulse to get up and do.
Good. So notice that you have an image when you're looking at the computer of a
Mhm.
computer. And then if you are doing the inquiry into intention, you notice your eyes close maybe or not, but the focus of what you're seeing is going to be, even if your eyes are open, you're going to have less attention on the screen in front of you, and you're going to see
Yes,
more of something else, right?
right,
Your eyes aren't going completely blank and going like they're shut, even you just don't have that kind of focus that you did on the computer. But
right.
notice if you close your eyes, you had the image of a computer, and now you will have an image of either some mental image of the body, of you might notice a physical sensation that's happening there that maybe has like a slight visual overlay of that physical sensation. Like if you feel that tension or tingling or something similar to what we were investigating earlier, you might actually have like a visual interpretation of that, like some yellow dots or something, different for everybody, may or may not have it. But just notice if even the physical sensations are getting any sort of visual representations. Notice it, whatever is appearing there, but it's still just appearing in the same place that the computer screen was appearing when you were looking at it. The idea of I was looking here and now the camera has turned around is itself this other illusion that happens afterwards. It's creating this uh it's creating this sort of movement that's not actually there. You're seeing an image of a camera, of a computer, and then you're seeing an image of something in the mental screen or, the sensations or whatever. But it's one thing to the next. And then there's a connection that's drawn that says, okay, there was an awareness of the computer, and now there's an awareness of whatever the mental imagery is. And because it seems to be seen, it's implying that there is a seer to it.
Seems to
So,
be seen implies there's a seer. Okay, I want to make sure I really took
yeah,
that
yeah.
in.
So you're seeing your computer screen in front of you right now. There's
Mhm.
an implication that there is somebody who is seeing this thing out there yet, right?
Right.
So if you have that image in the back of your mind, that same sort of implication is alive. It still seems like because there is something to be seen, even if it's in the head, that there is still somebody who is seeing it.
Yes, yes, very much so. And I've noticed I wasn't really as clearly aware of that as I was the fact that when that attention turns back this way, that there's kind of a mental picture of, and usually pretty vague. It's not clearly defined, but a
Yep.
mental picture of my face or my body, some sort of mental representation of
Yep.
this thing.
Exactly. And it's purely illusory in the sense that there is nobody there looking at it. And this is something we get more with the sixth fetter, where we recognize that right now it feels like there is a subject who is looking at a camera or looking at a computer, right? But that subject is an illusion. That subject is not there. What is actually here right now is only a camera and a computer. That the the positioning of it in relation to this felt sense that seems to be a certain number of feet in front of it is the illusion, is the overlay. It's that overlay of distance, and overlay of separation, and overlay of the idea that if something is being seen, there must be a seer. But where is that seer found? If you do seemingly turn that perception, that attention back on itself, is there any seer there who is looking at the camera?
It feels like there is because of, especially it seems because of that sense of attention turning it back on itself. But no, of course not.
No, but I want you to see it, like really see it enough times that it makes that click, because you having having the experience that every time you are seeing something, whether it's this way or this way or this way or this way, there is a sense that it is coming from it's being seen by the same source. Like looking out at the camera or the computer seems to be the same seer who is turning around and seeing thoughts,
I see.
right? But
And I don't, huh?
can you find the seer, the one who is supposedly able to turn in 360 degrees within the confines of the skull, to go from seeing through the eyes to seeing into the mental screen.
No.
So where it feels like there is a seer is something that we can investigate, whether it's in the physical sense, whether it's just an assumption because of the sort of logical way that we use language and interact with the world. Hearing has to be done by a hearer,
Right.
that sort of thing.
Right. There's a lot of assumption operating. I've noticed that
Yeah.
there's this that happens a lot. There's this assumption that if they're seeing or if there's hearing, then there must be someone seeing or hearing. And it's the same thing with that attention turning around. If that's happening, then there's some must be someone witnessing it.
Yeah, exactly. But we want to be really clear on what it is that is causing that illusion, just like what we talked about at the very beginning with what seems to be making that the feeling of intention or other beliefs solid is this feeling in the body that seems to be connected in some inexpressible way or unfindable way to thought about the belief, or that I could have intention. We want to break down exactly what it is that feels like that self, that witnesser, that subject,
The
and where is
assumption
it
seems to
being?
really fuel a lot of
Yeah,
it. Uh, the assumption married to, if we're talking in this example about following an intention, the the sense in the body of the physical sensations that accompany an intention and getting up to go and do something. Um, um, sure, I'm missing something, but those seem like the big components.
yeah. Keep looking, keep at it. But yes, I mean that's
Okay.
probably on its way there. Again, everybody has a different experience of this. Some people experience it in different ways. So I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. I just want you to keep investigating, because if you when you recognize that that seer is not there, there is probably going to be some sort of instant collapse of that distance. That's when we have the two-dimensional vision, the things suddenly becoming very close, that sort of thing, because that illusion is seen through even for a moment, that, oh yeah, there is absolutely nothing there seeing any of this. That feeling of being a viewer, a watcher, an experiencer is not actual. It, it's just assumption and illusion.
Okay. Well, I will definitely keep looking.
Yeah,
I mean, even in just a week, things have um, deepened. With being able to see the mental picture, the very vague, very ill-defined, very subtle, very quick mental pictures. Um, so there are more and more things fueling this.
amazing. That's really, really good. The last thing that I just wanted to quickly point out was from the very, very beginning. um, when you were talking about the no self experience that you have had recently, that was the one that was, and you used the word that it was uh deeper than you had had before in some way. And I was just wondering if you could, and I know it's tricky using memory for this sort of thing, but could you describe what you meant by deeper? What was different about it from the previous no self experiences? And then what's different about it from right now?
Well, two things. One is that um, it seemed to be kind of felt here,
Hmm.
somewhere in the body. I can't say where now, but it seemed to be more. The word I tend to default to is intuitive,
Okay.
but I almost feel like maybe it might be more appropriate to say somatic.
Hmm.
You know,
Okay.
it seemed to be here more than here.
Good.
And then there was another element to it that was I, I really don't know how to describe this, but there was mental some kind of mental imagery or something on the mental screen that was going on at times that it seemed like there was something there that was pointing to God. It's next to impossible to talk about. It just seemed like I don't know if this is going to be helpful or not. The best way I can think to try to convey it is it made me think of um, when under the influence of a psychedelic, that mental, things can happen on the mental screen that seem to contain information. They seem to
Hmm.
say something. And there was something along those lines that happened. It wasn't continuous, it wasn't always there, but it seemed to be part of the experience at times.
That's really interesting. Um, I'm curious of yeah, really how it differs from right now. Do you feel like you're more up here at this point?
That might be it. It just seemed to have the difference between then and now is that then it was felt and understood or sensed more deeply. It was like it
Yeah.
just really
Yeah, I know what you
there
mean.
was something about it, and I don't know how it works exactly, but there was something about the body being part of that.
Yeah.
Somehow that was playing a role in it.
Yeah, I do actually know exactly what you mean by that. Um, if you have that sort of deeply felt understanding in the body, which I hate using the word understanding or knowing because it's really that makes it sound much more cerebral than it is.
Right.
And it's not. It's not an intellectual thing. It's just the way that it is.
I
Yeah.
know how to describe it to you.
Yes.
What you said just helped me narrow it down. It's like when you have an intuition about something, like you walk into a room and you know that person is going, I got to watch out for that person. That person's going to cause problems. Or,
Yep.
you go to some place and I need to go this direction.
Yeah.
You don't know why, you just know you need to go there. It's
Completely.
along those lines.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. That's really good. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so can you, because you can bring up a memory of that time, can you bring it up and feel what it felt like at any point and see if what is different in feeling the memory of it as it happened right now and when it happened then? Is there something that feels different whether you are completely embodying the memory of that moment now or versus when you were living it then?
Well, for one thing, we're working with a memory, so it feels there's this illusion of it being distant.
But that's what I'm wondering. Can you make it be here now? Like, can you use the memory of, oh, I remember what it felt like to have that intuitive sort of, um,
Yeah, but it doesn't have that. It doesn't have the same degree of. It's not as palpable. It's not. Doesn't have the same degree of feltness or intensity. I mean, I can recall it, and I
right?
can kind of get beside it, but it just not to the degree that it was when it was happening yesterday.
Mhm. So I was curious if, yeah, I'd be curious for you to just occasionally try to go back to that memory and see if it can
Okay.
kind of bring you into that place, even little bits of it, because it's acclimating you to, oh yeah, that was a good, that was a good way to be. Whatever is happening in here that's aligning in such a way that is bringing back to that open, intuitively understood, no self realization. We want to cultivate that as much as possible. So coming back to the memory of that and being like, okay, and then why do I not feel that right now? What in my experience right this moment is different from that in a way that it makes me feel like that is not here right now.
Huh. Well, what is different about it that makes it feel like it's not here right now? That's okay. That's a heck of a question.
It's a good one to keep coming back to all the time because it's really what we're pointing at is there wasn't a self. There is not a self. There never will be a self. Sometimes you get that really clear understanding on a gut intuitive level. Sometimes you're caught up in the illusion. But what is it to be caught up in the illusion of identification? Why is it not felt all the time? What is palpably different now than it was in that moment?
Okay, well, I'll work with that. I mean, that's something that I can do more easily when I don't have, I'm not in a conversation with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it's something good to really, really take on the, well, not just on the mat, but take into life. So you're constantly just, okay, why am I not awake right now? Why is, why do I, and it's now that I'm not, why is it that I feel like I'm not awake right now? You know,
Okay.
where is the obstruction between any of the experiences that I've had of no self and this feeling of some sort of identification right now?
Hmm. Okay.
And then get clear of if it feels like that kind of density or heaviness somewhere in there, focus the spotlight on it. And what is that? Oh, tension in my cheeks, tension in my jaw, feelings of muscular tension in my chest, or feeling of blood flow, or maybe some sort of tingling or something else. Okay, well, is that a self? Is that keeping you from feeling this, expansive feeling?
Hmm. Okay. Wow. Okay. I'm just going to have to look at it and work with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why none of this is intellectual. This is always coming back to what is your actual experience in all of your senses? Come back into the body. What is happening there? What is happening in the mental images, in the sounds, and in the mental talk and all of that stuff? What is going on that is giving you the illusion that you are not awake, that you are a self of any type, that there is any sort of identification happening, that you have beliefs that you believe in, that you have intention? All of this stuff is of the same sort. And we investigate it all the same way because it's all coming out of that central illusion of, yeah, there's a me here. There's a me who's doing something. I'm seeing it. I'm making it happen. Are you now? And just get really curious about that.
Okay. So let's try to simplify that to make it easy to
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
I can always come back to this and make notes, but so it's come back to the body, see
Yep.
what's happening in the body, what sort of sensations, that kind of thing.
Yep.
mental images.
Yep.
And then it's a question of, why am I not feeling that now? What's different between then and now?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And, super simple. What feels like a self right in this moment?
Okay.
Why do I feel like I'm identified? Why do I feel like there's any sort of self here?
Okay.
How is that illusion being created? And just,
Okay.
and again,
That's
it's going to be in one of the five physical senses or five mental senses. It's one of those places, or well, a combination of those places, most likely. But you'll probably find that there's something which is most prominent, and other things that are connected.
okay.
And there you go. And just let it dissolve under the, again, it's that, snowball under the heat lamp. It's like it just dissolves under the light of your awareness of, oh, okay, well, I see sensations there. That's what I was feeling. I see an image very vague of the body or something like it. Okay, there's that. And then it just dissolves. That feeling of being the self can, even if it's only for a brief moment, can dissolve, because there's nothing there to support the illusion anymore. You've seen the constituent parts, and you know it's like having the the bunch of dirty clothes on a chair that you think is like a monster when the lights are off. It's like you see a shadow, and it's like, and then you turn the lights on. It's like, oh no, now you see the constituent parts. You see all the clothes, you see the lamp, you see the chair, you see all those things. And it's like, oh, it's not a monster anymore. Exactly the same with this.
And so you said something somewhere in the time we've been talking that implied it, and I believe I've heard other people say it as well. But is it true that if we keep bringing the attention back to this and keep investigating it, that eventually this breaks down?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't, you will still feel probably the constituent parts, but
Mhm.
it doesn't make it into the thing that it used to be taken as. You'll still see the chair and the lamp and the clothes. That doesn't have to dissolve. It's just no longer a monster. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, I like that. It's good to know, because sometimes it feels like, and I think most people go through this. You years go by and you keep going down this road, and sometimes it just feels like you're going in circles.
yeah, I know, I know. But I really think perseverance with this sort of inquiry all the time in your life is so powerful. And then just recognizing that, even if you have long periods where it's like, oh yeah, I don't feel like a self anymore. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, all of a sudden something happens, and you feel the sense of contraction, and you feel the sense of me, something, you know, somebody has a health thing, or something happens to the house or whatever it is, and you feel this contraction again. It's the same tools. You just look at it. Oh, okay. Nope. Now there's a tension in a different part of the body. And now there's, an elevated heart rate and a dump of adrenaline, or, all the feelings that go with that. And just, hey, now there are thoughts about a future, and there's thoughts about, oh, what's going to happen if this happens. Just break it down into its constituent parts, because there's not a self that got created again. It's just a new situation that caused that contraction to come up again. And then it just dissolves back out. So it's super common for people to have periods where they feel much less selfie, and then the selfing will come back again. And then there's like less selfing, then selfing shows up in another way. And it's a constant process we don't, that's why we do things cyclically, because it doesn't really seem like most people have a very clear one and done, never feeling like any sort of a remnant of a self again for the rest of your life. It just doesn't seem to be the way when you talk to almost everybody who's gone through this. Um, uh, so yeah, yeah, I would say just be honest, and with if it feels like a self in that moment, it's fine. Just investigate it. It doesn't have to be a perfect thing where it's like, there's okay, 4 and 5 are broken. There's never any sort of reactivity to anything at all. And then like uh you might have something happen and then a little bit of something else comes back. And it doesn't mean that you are, back to square one or anything like that. You're just, okay, that's something else that has a trigger that I wasn't aware of, and let's investigate that. So these things are just constantly coming back at deeper and deeper levels, and it's all just different levels of identification in the end. So we just keep
Huh.
coming back to what's there and investigate. There's no is ironically, as long as there's no ego involved in it, we're fine. If it gets to be where it's like, oh, I thought I was at this level and it turns out I'm not. If, I'm doing this because I want to be at better, 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 because there is this subtle self boosting of, haha, I am someone who has ascended the ranks and I have, seen and I'm awakened. And if there is an I that is getting strengthened in that process of, then, maybe going the wrong direction. Maybe look into,
Well, I've I'm sure there are times I miss it, but I clock myself on that a lot.
yeah,
I notice that one coming up from time to time. Somebody who's trying to get somewhere, trying to get something in order to build themselves up. I'm like, no, this
yep,
is
yep.
counterproductive.
Good. But, and be compassionate with it, because again, it's there for a reason. You're doing that
Oh,
because you've had a background of thinking that you are not good enough and put down, you're the scapegoat, you're put down in every possible way. So of course you're going to do whatever it takes to feel better and good at something. So whether it's, being good at music, or, a good parent, or an enlightened person, whatever it is, it's always striving for creating something that gives you a sense of being good enough. Haha, this is something I have succeeded in. Other people can even see that this is you know, something that shows that I'm a really good person because I'm awake now. Whatever it is, that's the thing. And so be kind and compassionate with the fact that that's only there because there has been this deficiency in self-worth. So we do the affirmations, we do the practices, we boost that, and then you don't need to have any sort of accolades or any trophy on your shelf because you've reached stage 10. Woohoo! It's it doesn't have to be that. It's just this naturally unfolding process. It unfolds as it unfolds. It's not linear. It sometimes seems like it's like, oh, there's a little over here, and now I'm seeing something over here, and then it's back over here again. Fine. It's just a natural unfolding process. Once the ego is taken out of it, it doesn't matter what direction it goes, how long it takes, what the patterns are. None of that.
that's a good point. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you said that.
Good.
I
So
mean,
so
that's not like I beat myself up, but at the same
no.
time, there is sort of this subtle sense of, I don't know, kind of knocking someone down. Like, yeah, enough of you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I know. Be kind and compassionate to all of it.
okay, I can do that.
Good. Yeah, and most of all, love thyself.
I'm
Keep
learning to
up
do
with the
this.
affirmations. Yeah,
I'm learning to do this.
I love that. It
And
sounds like
like I
it's
said, it's
working
working.
though.
Huh?
It sounds like it's really helping because
I think so. I mean, I think we've only just started to get the tip of the tip of the iceberg. But still, I mean, the fact that, something can come up and it can be something that normally would provoke the um, shame and guilt response, and I'm the problem, and instead it's like, I mean, it's a mix. There are times where it does set off that, that
of
happened.
course.
What was that, Sunday before last? But at the same time, there are also times where it doesn't happen, where I see it happening. No, we don't need to do that. We
Yeah,
don't need to
it's
go there.
amazing.
You know, there's nobody here who's done anything wrong.
So good. Positive progress,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily directly linear either, but you see how any of those wins are so important to have. And they just kind of multiply the more you do it, you know. You really can heal these things from across time. We're healing stuff from way back in childhood, and it's right now. It's absolutely right now. So,
All I can say is I'm glad our paths crossed. You know,
yeah, me too.
your presence in my life has made a huge difference.
Yeah.
So
It's been an absolute pleasure and honor, and I'm so looking forward to just continuing to see how this unfolds. It's
I
so
am too.
so much fun.
Yeah, I don't let myself dwell on a lot, but at the same time, I do think about it, and I'm looking forward to wherever this might take us.
Yeah, me too. All right, with that, it's been about 2 hours. I think we should call it a night.
Yeah, probably so. I'm hearing stuff going on out there. I can only imagine what kind of disasters I'm going to have to deal with when I walk out there. So,
So be present during all of it and see what comes up as you encounter one disaster after another.
okay, good point.
Yeah, see what that does inside. Be in the body instead of in the mind with like, oh no, this is the now I've got to do this now that. Just be in the body and see what the reactions are to everything happening.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having to learn how to do that. I'm having to learn how to notice the reactions instead of the thinking.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So
But it can get there.
yeah, oh, definitely. You had a lot of years doing it the other way around, so now you're just relearning. It's a new skill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
keep up the great work. It's amazing. So I'll see
thanks.
you in our meeting next week, but then we'll do another one of these in 2 weeks.
And 2 Fridays, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
sounds
All
so good. All right. Thank
right.
you so
Thanks,
much, Todd.
Todd. All right.
Have
Talk
a
to you on
great
Tuesday.
night. Yep.
All right. Bye.
Bye.